Well, welcome back to the Digital Workplace Podcast. Here we are with Bob Pulver as our guest. He is the principal at Cognitive Path. Hey, Bob, how's it going?
Doing great, Neil. How you doing?
I'm doing excellent. It's we're recording this on a Friday, which is always nice. Trying to live and stretch into the weekend. But we're excited to have you here. You got a lot of cool experiences we're going to unpack and get going on stuff. But first, let's confirm you are a real human. Your capture question today, Bob, is if you're alone in your home and there's a fire, you get to grab one thing on your way out. What is it?
Just one thing, huh? I guess it's got to be my phone. Can't go anywhere without my phone.
So you can call the fire department on your way out, I guess, right?
I can do whatever I need to do. That's my little pocket-sized computer.
Yeah. It's weird though. I feel like there was a time when like your phone was like the key treasure. And now for me, it's just become a phone. Like, I don't care which one it is. Like, I can get all my data no matter which phone it is. Like, just give me one. How do you feel about that? Are you very attached to your particular one?
I'm down to one phone. I recently converted after, over a decade of Android phones. I did become an Apple, convert. It has simplified my life because my entire immediate and extended family are all on iPhones. So FaceTime has become probably my most used new app.
Yeah,
which is great. And I got to use, Clubhouse for the last, 5 months, which has actually been really good.
Yeah.
As well.
And that was actually like, I didn't use any iPhones before. And then we wanted to get on Clubhouse. So it was like, all right, well, that's the only way to do it. But now I use iPhone. Yeah. I can't say it's like amazingly better, but it is like, it does simplify parts of life for sure.
I did use, when I was at NBC Universal, I did use two phones for the first time, which I wasn't sure I was going to want to do. But the fact is, all the cyber experts that I talked to were all carrying two phones, and there's got to be a reason for that. And I didn't want the company to have access to remotely wipe my phone for some unknown reason. And so I didn't mind having both. And I got to always, I was always familiar with iOS because I use it for work. So it was an easy transition. Yeah.
There you go. I don't know, like in terms of my answer to what would I grab if I'm alone, it's mostly like all this stuff. Like I would love to have most of these, at least I would want a picture of all the books that are here so I would know how to replace them. I got a couple little trinkets that are like from my grandparents and things. I haven't ever told anybody, but I got a piece of wood in the background there. That's something my great grandfather whittled from like one piece of wood. So it's like a wood chain.
That's a great little piece there. That's awesome. Yeah. That's funny. I have some stuff from my grandparents as well. I have some old like whiskey jugs and stuff like that. I'm a big, whiskey guy. So this is like, I don't even know how old that is, but I got a couple random things like that as well.
Yeah. That stuff's hard to replace.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, cool. So you're approved, Bob. You brought out the whiskey bottle, so that's the real check. The phone was like, I'm not sure. I mean, a computer would also stay home. So you talked about NBC Universal. You actually have a very, very interesting professional career. So why don't you give us the short version of that?
Yeah, sure. So worked for IBM for the bulk of my career in a lot of different roles across, process transformation. I worked in sales transformation. I worked in what we used to call social business. So before it was digital transformation, we called it social business. And had some client-facing roles, worked closely with IBM Research in a technical, pre-sales role. I did some consulting for IBM, market intelligence. A lot of that was all around the social analytics space. So really understanding people's behavior, whether they're consumers or employees, et cetera, across different ecosystems. Did a lot of crowdsourcing and collective intelligence kinds of projects, either exploring different methodologies to improve collaborative decision making, or just to get people more involved with, either innovation or, project management, product management, things like that. And then when I went to NBC, I focused on strategy and operations. So basically, executive staff to the global CIO, looking at how to build automation strategy, how to get people more engaged across silos, because that organization was siloed by design across, film, news, TV, et cetera. And really trying to again, there was a collective intelligence kind of theme there, but also just general sort of knowledge sharing and talent mobility. Those are the kinds of things that I was interested in. And then also we did some work around software engineering. So, media companies these days, as much as anybody, are technology companies. And so
Yep.
How do you beef up that engineering and product management, muscle, whether it's, products or cloud or cybersecurity? I mean, how are you positioning yourself for the future and sort of controlling your own destiny as you develop a lot of, software applications and services and things like that. So I really got into a role where I was doing a lot of talent acquisition and thinking about internal mobility, upskilling, reskilling, all the things that are part of the sort of future of work kinds of trajectories that we need to think about. So that led me to start this Cognitive Path company, which is basically an advisory to whether you're focused on talent or you're trying to just leverage automation, AI, and analytics to improve your operations and stay competitive. These are things that are going to affect every industry, and you're going to fall behind, and you're going to be in jeopardy. The business itself will be in jeopardy if you don't embrace some of these technologies.
Yeah. I'm a little curious as to, I mean, you have exposure to so many different types of technologies in your career, lots of different people, lots of different ideas that went through it. Why is it that now that you're kind of starting this new venture, what was it about this convergence of technology and talents and these opportunities? Why was this like the one thing you wanted to center on?
Well, I saw a lot of these trends. I think about not just trends, but the intersection of trends. Yeah. So that's where I put my sort of amateur futurist, hat on, and I've taken some strategic foresight, programs through the Future School, and I've just been fascinated with how people sort of plan for the future and take like a systems thinking approach. And so when I started thinking about, I've had many roles where I've been a sort of a square peg in a round hole. And so I started thinking about that. I started thinking about, I've had, success in my career, but there's a lot of people who haven't. They're not aware of their own potential, and no one has shown them the path forward. So the other thing is, the last role I had at IBM was really leading this entrepreneurial community where everyone was trying to come up with novel solutions using the IBM Watson cognitive services. So how do you combine some of those APIs in unique ways to create, a novel solution? And so some of those were focused on in the talent space. And I just thought, what could be more impactful than having technology help people, find more meaning or become more self-aware of their own capabilities, whether that's, personalized learning paths or it's, just understanding how to be a better, colleague and teammate or leader. Technology can help you do that. And then you get into, some of the automation capabilities as you move up that automation maturity scale, if you will, from robotic process automation, RPA, up to, intelligent and even cognitive automation. You're talking about machines doing things that people would have never thought, a machine could do. And now you're talking about it's not just routine, mundane tasks that affect perhaps, lower, only certain roles that you would expect where they're doing repetitive things. Now it's affecting, knowledge work. Now it's affecting, white collar, jobs. And so I just think the combination of that technology with talent, letting people do the things that they're really good at and let the machines do the things that they're really good at, and you merge those things together and you have this ideal, symbiosis of where the term augmented intelligence really comes to provide a lot of value, right? You're not removing humans from the loop, right? You're still, involved in final decision making and things like that. Now the machines may still learn, as they go and take on more and more, tasks but I think there's always going to be a need for humans.
Yeah, I sense
loop.
that a lot in terms of like when people say, hey, the machines aren't going to take your jobs. It's going to be fine. Like, you're going to be okay. There's always that little asterisk as like, for now, like
Right.
all the jobs we can think of that we're doing right now, they're not going to take tomorrow. Eventually they will,
Right.
But hopefully
Yeah.
it's on us to kind of build those new jobs and the new experiences that will continually push us farther ahead. I feel like that's one way where we are not keeping up pace in terms of like, we're just still digging in our feet and saying, no, humans, we're going to keep doing this thing and not going to upskill ourselves as we go through.
Yeah. I also think that, so there's technology that affects talent, affects us individually. And then there's technology that affects, teams and organizations. And so I think a lot of it and I saw a lot of this at IBM. So it's interesting that it's only really now becoming more mainstream, but things like, social network analysis, people analytics, these aspects of, future of talent, future of HR. I mean, I saw these in the mid 2000s. It was probably 2007, 8, 9, at the beginning of what we used to call social business, where people were really starting to embrace and digitize and become more social and digital savvy, I guess. And but just understanding, relationship graphs and understanding how to best, where are my experts, where are the skills, those kinds of things were all precursors to, talent mobility today, but also, improved methods of just disseminating, knowledge. So I think there's a lot of this is finally, getting the recognition it deserves because it's providing all this insight that we just didn't have before.
Yeah. Bob, I want to talk about a question that's always been bothering me lately. It's that I feel like when we're looking for talent, and I feel like we always put it in that term, like I'm looking for somebody who's outside my team, somebody I don't know yet.
Yeah.
It's almost always in that terminology. And we're usually always looking for like a fully formed individual, like somebody who's going to come, they got to have these skills, they got to have these things that are there. And that makes it hard to find people because there aren't a ton of fully formed, high functioning individuals that have all the skills that you need out there. So there's that tension there. And then there's also like looking around at the people that or people you're working with, you're like, man, no. There's like this idea in our head that I don't know how to upskill those people or reskill or whatever term you would prefer. So walk us through the tension, what you're seeing from your side.
Yeah, this is a really important one. So one of the things that I actually experimented with at IBM, and again, it's now becoming, there's like unicorns in this space, but within HR tech, there's this concept of a talent marketplace, right? And so this is, just like you have gig marketplaces, externally, Upwork, Fiverr, TopTool, and places like that. You've got internal talent marketplaces as well. Now, if they are, a lot of them do have the capability where you could use it for an entire talent ecosystem, meaning you could go out and start to look at a broader talent, global talent pool at this point, right? Where you could look across your internal organization, maybe, partner organizations, but you could also look for, independent, contractors or consultants and things like that. The only way you can really make sense of that is if the skills are all tied into that. And so I think where this space is evolving is you've got to, once you have all that information and those things are relatively mature and you can see both internally and externally, you can start to make decisions about, I've got a 6-month contract. It's or 6-month project or product, and it's gonna. I'm gonna need this set of skills for the duration. I'm gonna need this set of skills for half that, or and this is how I see the strategy, sort of evolving, and I've got to evolve my talent, along with that, so we don't miss a beat. I think tools like that or platforms like that will get more intelligent to allow you to make some contextual, decisions about who you hire when. But there's a big push, if you think about the cost of hiring an external person versus finding talent internally who has the potential to succeed in the roles of the future, right? So this is a big thing for automation as well. I'm going to automate a specific set of tasks or processes. These are the roles that typically, perform that function. Do these people have the potential, once I automate that, to be moved into another area? So just from a cost standpoint alone, you would save a lot of money if you found resources internally. Now, that's easier said than done, right? You've got to overcome some cultural, barriers where managers or leaders might be hoarding, talent, or they're incentivized in the short term. They've got goals to meet. They can't just let somebody go. You can't just let your admin go into a coding boot camp for 6 months. You've got deliverables, right? And so you've got to strike that balance between organizational goals and objectives and what's in the best interest of the company, along with the goals and objectives of at a team level. So at some point those things need to get in sync if they're not already, which of course they should be. But there's a lot of people who are underutilized, right? In addition to people who are unemployed, there's underemployed, and there's people who are not aware of their own potential. So how do you tap into that, whether it's through assessments or other means? You've got to see what's in your toolkit already, right? And you've got some people who maybe we're going to leave because they're not happy, or because they're bored, or whatever it is. But that's why some of these people analytics and social listening and all these things, you can sort of take a pulse, an ongoing pulse of the organization to understand how to move the pieces around, because this is chess, not checkers, right? It's really complicated, and you've got to think multiple moves ahead.
Yeah, and it is extremely complicated. I mean, I'm thinking about, I love in a lot of ways the push towards more like project-based teams, where it's more like, hey, this is the task we got to get done. Let me put together a team for 6 months, 2 years, 3 years, and put all those people together and let's get going. But that does require, I can't wait for somebody to be developed into that role. Like, we got to go, we got to hit the ground running, we got to move. So if I have a smaller company, like, I need all those people to be ready to go. So trying to figure out, how do you give people space to do that learning, to say, hey, I need to take a break from these big projects to take 6 months and do some kind of a reskill or a boot camp like that. That's tough.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think when you start thinking about, so there's some folks like John Boudreau who have talked about work without jobs. I mean, it's a provocative sort of thought, right? But ultimately, if you had everybody, if you could do sort of just in time, staffing, and you had the right visibility to people's availability, their skills, their work styles, those kinds of things, you could potentially dynamically, compose and decompose and then recompose, teams like that. I mean, Dave Gray talked about, I think he called it podular design, right? He called it, that was like a decade ago, I feel like, where he talked about where people could just, move from pod to pod and just get stuff done, right? And so, but how do you change the incentive structures? How do you change? It completely breaks a traditional corporate hierarchy, of course, right? So who's got the appetite for that, especially a larger organization, right?
And to be able to tell people, like, look, you're responsible for delivering results, being on a project or a team for this amount of time, but we're also going to expect you to take 20% of your year or 10% of your year or of this time to not be working on projects and go out there and learn something new and to figure out something else, and to be able to build that in too. Yeah. Man, all right, let's shift a little bit. Let's talk about, I sense this kind of rise perhaps in when it comes to like personality tests, motivational tests, assessments that come out there. I feel like we kind of hit a peak back with like the DISC and the Myers-Briggs stuff that came out, I don't know, in the 90s type thing that was there. And then everything kind of plateaued for a while. And now you see a little bit of a resurgence of these tools now that we're realizing, okay, maybe we can go a little deeper, or maybe we can be a little more useful to those. What are you seeing from your angle from those types of assessments?
So I've taken a lot of these myself over the last 6 months as I've been, in my own, job search. And so I felt it was, it was a perfect opportunity to sort of as I'm recalibrating, the next step in my career, to really just gain a little bit more self-awareness, right? I haven't always had consistent feedback about, my performance. I mean, I know, people really like, working with me, and I know the things that I've been exposed to, but without that ongoing feedback, it's hard to continually, course correct and know that you're growing and improving, right? So I've taken a lot of these different assessments. Some of them were DISC assessments, but I've taken a lot. So Ray Dalio's, Principles U, I took that one. I took one from Plum.io was really interesting because it broke down. I forget how long it took me to take that assessment, but there were like at least 10, 12 different categories of things that I hadn't even really thought about. Like if you just sat me in a room and say, design an assessment, I don't think I would have come up with the laundry list of categories. But it's everything from, how you deal with conflict, how you deal with, being a mentor or a coach, your work style, a little bit of personality. Do you like working alone versus in a team? Where do you thrive? So I think these things are incredibly important. Some of them will, and they're all very constructive in their criticism, not criticism, but, here's some things that you can work on. Here are some things you should look for, or even the type of organization that you should look for. Because even when you say, oh, I want to go work for a startup. Well, what do you mean? Like, do you want to go work with 3 people before you even have a website or a mission statement? Do you want to work for somebody that's already got through, their series, C, funding round, or, because it could be completely, chaotic, and you could wear, 10 hats versus, clarity of mission, earning a salary instead of sweat equity. I mean, there's a lot of, differences in where you want to work. And so I think the assessments are incredibly valuable to understand how to, where to put your chips, right? In terms of your job search, but also just where should I prioritize my own learning and my own growth? And then some of it's around, from a talent acquisition perspective, because that's where I'm focused on right now. How do you mitigate bias in, the hiring process? How do you improve, the candidate experience? How do you get quality over quantity in your pipeline of candidates? And so I think these assessments can be incredibly powerful. Now, I don't have necessarily a favorite or one that, checks all the boxes, but that's part of. I'm in the middle of drafting a blog post about, all the ones that I've taken and how valuable I think they are. In aggregate, I'll probably cherry pick, what I liked about each one, and so there's not one that I would say, okay, we're going to use this one and only this one. But I do think it's valuable to gather that information up front. I mean, you could really almost eliminate your whole initial screening process if you ask the right questions and you have technology that can actually interpret those answers. So not just how you answered it, but what can I infer from the content of your responses about how you work. So that I think is valuable, because you're almost doing 2 assessments at once, and providing feedback both to the hiring team as well as to you personally. So even going through it is a learning experience for the candidate.
And
so I think there's a lot of value there.
I also like the maturity of a lot of these assessments that have come out, like you said, like that they have grown, and there's much more insights you can get from them than you did before. And so we're kind of experiencing that. And I think the whole nature of moving into a digital workplace also changes things, because it used to be, hey, let's all do this test. We'll spend a day debriefing it. That was really cool, insightful. Oh, Bob likes these types of things. All right, that's cool. And then maybe one day that like triggers something in mind. Oh, maybe that's why he's like that. But that's pretty much the extent of it. But now when in these digital platforms, it's like if I know, okay, I'm working on a team with Bob that immediately I can pull up his profile, which almost becomes more like a user manual. Like, this is how you should interact with Bob. These are the types of messages that he likes. This is like his preferred communication style. This is his preferred leadership style. And you could even like customize a lot of that. Like, as I learn new things about you, and that's the tough stuff. Typically takes, a year or 2 years to learn about somebody and to be able to jump into those things. And not assume that that's always going to be like that, but to have that kind of thing is great. But one point you brought up too is the interoperability of all these tests. Like, it's hard to get everybody to use the same one, and that'll never happen because each one has its own strengths and weaknesses. But it would be nice, even like before I'm going to hire somebody, like I can see their profile as it comes through and know ahead of time if they're going to work on my team, or just some kind of universal standards around that. So I don't think that's going to happen, but there's definitely merit in that idea too.
Oh, absolutely. It's hard because you've got to, you're trying to put the right puzzle piece into the bigger puzzle, right? And so it's not, you're not just hiring a warm body. You're not just hiring that person in isolation. They're going to be working as part of a team. The team chemistry needs to work. So it needs to be I like the phrase culture add, not culture fit. And so how does this person fit? And I think Ray Dalio's, I was particularly interested in Ray Dalio's because I've, read his book Principles and how he thinks about and codifies a lot of what he learns into those kinds of structured diagnostics. So it's some really interesting work going on there.
Very cool. Well, Bob, we have reached the end of our time. This has been a fascinating discussion. I've really enjoyed thinking about it. I feel like you're someone who's living in the present and got a foot in the future and figuring out how all this works as people get through it. Where can people go if they want to learn more about what you're doing?
Just hit me up on LinkedIn is probably the easiest, or bob@cognitivepath.io if you want to talk about what Cognitive Path can do. I'm on all the socials as well. You can find me on Clubhouse, Twitter, wherever, Instagram.
Yeah. No, we met on Clubhouse, right? That was the kind of the first thing that came through. Well, cool. Yeah, and you talk about LinkedIn. Just as we close off, it's like, man, I feel like they're just not. I wish they were a little bit more ambitious because they could be a big part in leading the way in some of these talent conversations and things.
I don't get it. I don't get it. Why they missed the ball. I mean, it was theirs to just own. I mean, I don't get it. It's fascinating to me.
It is.
Well, we'll left opportunity for a lot of other people. Yeah. There's some amazing startups doing some excellent, valuable work, and it'll be interesting to see how that market starts to consolidate over the next couple of years.
Yeah, that'll be exciting. Well, cool, Bob. Thanks for being on the show. We look forward to continuing to listen from you in different parts and bring you in for new conversations.
Excellent. Thanks so much, Neil.